BP is working to deliver the energy America needs today while developing lower carbon alternatives. We support more than 275,000 U.S. jobs, and in 2022, our businesses contributed more than $70 billion to the U.S. economy. Every major BP global business is active in America, our largest presence in the world. That's how BP is investing in America.
Hi, this is Lyle Levitt welcoming you to TribFest 23. I hope you're enjoying this weekend of big ideas and important conversations about the future of our state and our country. No matter who you are or what you believe, please be courteous and respectful to everyone around you. And no matter where you call home, thank you for being here. That's right, even if you're not from Texas, the Texas Tribune Festival wants you anyway.
Welcome to our closing session of this year's Texas Tribune Festival. Again, I'm Sonal Shah, CEO of the Texas Tribune. Hopefully, I had a chance to meet with many of you this last few days, and if not, we'll make sure it happens. We've made it to the end. Y'all ready? Did y'all get your 10,000 steps in? You're cooling down after the outdoors today? On behalf of the Texas Tribune, I want to extend a huge thank you to all of you for spending the last few days with us. The Tribune Festival was designed to bring the big national conversations to Texas, and more importantly, Texas to the national conversation. So what do you think? Did we do it? We want to know how it went for you. You'll be getting a survey from us in the next few days. Your feedback shapes the look and feel for next year. So please share your thoughts with us. None of this happens without a great team. And I want to acknowledge those, and I want you to help me acknowledge those who made this event happen. So here it goes. Jacob Villanova, Ellen Burris, Matt Ewalt, Natalie Choat, Carrie Quinnell, April Hinkle, Terry Quinn. And now I also want to acknowledge Sewell Chan, our editor-in-chief, Ayan Mitra, and those of you that are the journalists that are in the room, can you all please stand up, Texas Tribune journalists? They are the ones reporting every day on the important issues in Texas. Now, there's one more person that we need to thank, Evan Smith. Evan, can you join me on stage? This is where I get to take the liberties. Evan, your dedication and vision 14 years ago to create this newsroom with Ross Ramsey was incredible. And who knew that you could think about a digital-first news organization in 2009 and turn it into what you've turned it into? So thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
He made a bold bet, and that bet has been incredible. And thanks to him, I get to be here. Now, finally, let me say, Our news organization is in its 14th year. We have the same creativity, energy, and ambition and passion to serve Texans as it did when it first got started. Sure, we've come a long way, but there is more work to be done, and we'll continue to answer the call for local communities and for our state. We'll continue to do the work and envision a chapter of the Texas Tribune with you by our sides. So thank you for being here, thank you for your support, and thank you for supporting the Texas Tribune. Now, Evan, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sonal. Hi, everybody. We are indeed at the big finish of the 2023 Texas Tribune Festival. Have you had a great time? Did you enjoy it? Good. Let me tell you, it has been so fun to be back at it this year, better than we imagined. So many smiling faces, so many packed venues, in a couple of cases, a little too packed. I hope you'll agree that we over-delivered on our promise to give you 3 full days of in-depth conversations with some of the most influential and interesting people in the state and the country on topics that affect every one of us in our daily lives, not insignificantly. We also raised an extraordinary amount of money to pay for serious journalism. Please give yourselves a hand because you are part of that. I'm a bit of a broken record on this, but indulge me. The job of the Tribune has always been to enable thoughtful and productive citizenship, to raise the level of civic engagement, to civilize conversations about issues through beat reporting, daily and breaking news reporting, political reporting, investigative reporting, data reporting, and editorial events like this one. Every day, everyone at the Trib searches for the truth and tells all of you what they find. Light applause for the truth. Noted. Every day, everybody at the Trib searches for the truth and tells you what they find. All right. I gave you a mulligan. Every day they hold public officials and taxpayer-funded institutions accountable without regard to party and ideology, and every day they surface for all of you in your busy lives the things important enough to stop and pay attention to. That is what John and Ross and I said at the beginning, 14 years ago, what we wanted the Trib to do, and it is what the Tribune is still doing with energy and ambition and purpose all these years later on platforms small and large and stages small and large, but no stage larger than this one. The difference is the moment we're in. The work of our nonprofit newsroom has always been important, but never has it been as important as it is right now. The last year in Texas makes the case better than I or anyone else ever could for the Texas Tribune's existence. Likewise, never has this festival, this opportunity to come together, listen respectfully to smart people and especially those people you don't agree with going in the door, and to make sense of an increasingly complex world. Never has that been as important as it is now. So let's get on with the task of wrapping this sucker up. Before I bring out the last of our nearly 300 distinguished guests on our program this weekend, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. First, I want to thank the sponsors of this year's festival one more time for stepping up and supporting our public interest journalism year-round. We say it always, this stuff does not pay for itself. Free to consume, not free to produce. Their dollars pay as your dollars pay for everything we do. Visit Fort Worth, the largest presence this year across the festival. BP, the presenting sponsor of our opening and closing keynotes. Starts With Us. You could not go anywhere at this festival without seeing folks from Starts With Us. Emergent, Arnold Ventures, Chevron, Comcast, Raise Your Hand, Texas. 6th Street, the Sumners Foundation, Texas Monthly. The Sumners Foundation contingent is in the house. Texas Monthly, Visit El Paso and the County of El Paso. Capital Factory, the Cynthia and George Mitchell Foundation, HCA Healthcare, Houston Landing, Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute, Methodist Healthcare Ministries of South Texas, Texas 2036, Texas Mutual Insurance, Texas State Technical College, UT Health's Houston School of Public Health, AARP Texas, Adobe CIA, Anheuser-Busch, Austin Community College District, the law firm of Barron Adler, Clough and Odo, Beer Alliance of Texas, the Commit Partnership, Educate Texas, Good Systems at UT Austin, HEB, the Hobby School of Public Affairs, the Hotel Magdalena, Houston Endowment, Houston Loves Teachers, Jackson Walker LLP, JP Morgan Chase, the Meadows Foundation, Encore, Panacea Collective, PepsiCo, Philanthropy Advocates, RISA Foundation, Rice University's Masters of Social Policy Evaluation, St. David's Healthcare, Texas AFT, the Texas Association of Community Colleges, the Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities, the Texas Energy Summit, the Texas Forward Party, the Texas Lyceum, Texas State Teachers Association, Tito's Handmade Vodka. Every time that gets the biggest applause. Trellis Foundation, University of Texas Press, William Chris Vineyards, and World Education Services. Hands for our sponsors, please. I also want to thank Festival Media Partners, the Austin Chronicle, Fort Worth Report, El Paso Matters, KERA, ProPublica, San Antonio Report, and the 19th. Thanks to everybody, as Sonal said, on the Texas Tribune staff, in this instance, too many to name, who worked to make this our best festival ever. Thanks to our outside partners, Autumn Rich and Panacea Collective, and Robert Busweiler, Candace Pugach, and everybody at Sunshine Sachs for their hard work and good cheer. And biggest and most sincere thanks to all of you. Truly, seeing you staring back at us from this stage makes it all worthwhile. You're here, you're reading, you're helping us carry the flag for a more informed and more engaged Texas. You're giving us momentum and motivation to do this work, and we love you for it. Your support makes everything possible. If you are already a member of the Texas Tribune, thank you. And if you're not, please consider signing up tonight. It's our fall member drive. If you go to texastribune.org/join, you will be eligible to win a swanky weekend getaway. But more important than a sweepstakes is the knowledge that you made Texas better by making Texas smarter. So become a member, because that's a good thing. All right. Here is the drill for tonight. About 50 minutes of back and forth on stage, then we'll do about 15 minutes of audience Q&A. We don't have microphones in the room, you'll recall, here at the Paramount. Instead, as we've done at previous fests, we're going to go ask you to go submit your questions online, texastribune.org/ask, and we will ask them on your behalf. Last things, speaking of phones, please silence yours. And if you're tweeting or threadsing or whatever about this session, use the hashtag TribFest23. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the closing keynote of the 2023 Texas Tribune Festival, a conversation with United States Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat of West Virginia, at least for the moment. More on that in a bit. A native, that's not a bad one, come on, that's stuck with the facts. A native of the small coal mining town of Farmington, West Virginia, a graduate of West Virginia University, which I hear won its football game today. The senator is in his 37th year in elective office. He served 14 years in the West Virginia legislature, 4 in the House and 10 in the Senate, another 4 as Secretary of State, and nearly 6 as governor before winning a U.S. Senate seat in a special election. Now approaching the end of his second full term in the upper chamber of Congress, he has never been more powerful. As the most conservative member of a party that controls the Senate majority by the slimmest of margins, he is often the swing vote on major pieces of legislation and key nominations. Sometimes he forces a compromise, as he did with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Sometimes he votes with his fellow Democrats, as he did on attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, on the Trump tax cuts, and in both Trump impeachment trials. And sometimes, to their consternation, he does not vote with his party, as he did on coal mining restrictions, funding for the border wall, and reforms of the filibuster, to name other things. Senator Manchin serves on 4 key committees: The Energy and Natural Resources Committee, which he chairs, along with Appropriations, Armed Services, and Veterans Affairs. He is at the center of debates over some of the biggest issues of our day: broadband access for rural communities, college sports, fossil fuels. We will get to some of that tonight. But, you know, I have other things I want to talk about. As every single person in this room is well aware, Senator Manchin is the protagonist in all manner of 2024 drama. He's up for re-election to his Senate seat at a time when the Senate majority for his party is at risk, in a state that's approaching impossible for his party to win these days. But will he run again? He's acknowledged that he's considering switching his party affiliation to independent. But will he follow through? Most tantalizing, he's been floated as a possible third-party candidate for president. But will he make the leap? On that last point, his prospective third-party run for the White House, Democrats in Texas and elsewhere would like a word. When we announced Senator Manchin as our closing night keynote earlier this month, it unleashed a torrent of complaints that reduced to something, hand the election to Donald Trump. Weeks later, it hasn't abated. Let's just say that if we sold tomatoes outside the Paramount tonight, we could fund many years of journalism. But it is not only the progressive left that's worried about Senator Manchin in 2024. Last week, the Washington Post reported that Republican Senator Mitt Romney of Utah has spoken many times to the senator about why mounting a third-party run for president is a bad idea. Quote, "I lobby continuously that it would only elect Trump," Romney told the paper. The job of journalism is not to make you happy. It's to make you think. I think we have exactly the right closing night in this moment. Every bit as right as Liz Cheney was last year in that moment. The story of our country's politics in 2024 is dissatisfaction with the status quo. You hear it on the news, you read it on social media, and you see it in the polls. Survey after survey shows voters don't like the choices before them. In the absence of a palatable alternative, they may be voting against rather than for. Wouldn't be the first time. The next hour should be fascinating and newsworthy, so let's get to it. Please welcome the closing night keynoter at the 2023 Texas Tribune Festival, Senator Joe Manchin.
Thank you. You did great. I don't think there's anything left to say.
No, there's plenty left to say. Come on. Good. How you doing?
Real well.
Thank you very much for coming to Austin.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
It's wonderful to have you.
To be here.
Great. I'm sort of hoping this is going to be like that LeBron James special on ESPN, The Decision. Also 75 minutes long, where he told us at the end whether he would play for Cleveland or Miami. Mm-hmm. Let's not make everybody wait, though, 75 minutes.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Are you going to run for president? Yes or no?
I don't know.
Senator, you don't know?
I don't know.
You haven't decided?
Let me just say real quick.
Yes.
I'm going to do whatever it takes to try to bring my country together. I've had enough is enough. I've never seen us divided as much as we are. I've had a person one time come up to me from back home, and it was a beautiful lady, and she says, Joe, do you know how bad things look when I'm watching television and seeing the discourse and the toxic atmosphere that you all have in Washington? And I said, make sure I understand what you're saying. You're sitting home in your comfort of your house, and you're watching on television, probably having a dinner or maybe a beverage. Try it from my seat. Try it from my seat if you think it's bad where you're looking from.
Right.
So when I'm saying I'm going to do everything in my power to bring this country.
For that woman and for other people. But, Senator, it's getting to be pretty late in the cycle.
Oh, not at all.
You're a smart guy. Surely you know what you're going to do.
Evan, only in America does the next election start the day after the last election. Only in this country.
But you live in that America. Come on.
Well, my filing date in West Virginia is not until January.
Okay.
So I've been saying all along, I think, that I'll make a decision by the end of the year.
But that's it. So that's good. So let's talk about the pros and the cons, and then we'll talk about the sequence of this. So what are the pros and the cons of running for president? Surely you've thought about that. even if you haven't decided what you're...
Well, we're talking a lot of people. Basically, right now, when you think about it, in the primary of a Democrat primary or a Republican primary, roughly 10 million people in each side elect who's going to be representing that party. Now, let's say there's 20 million people that make a decision on what you get to vote, who you get to vote for.
Right.
There'll be 150 to 160 million Americans voting. That's not much of an opportunity to have any type of challenging, if you will, or any type of an option. So people says, well, third party. Only thing I can tell you is neither party can win without the independent voter. Without that swing vote, you can't win, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican.
Right.
And right now, they're making each one of you all pick a side. What side are you on? Are you picking your side because you think one promises more than the other, or because one has villainized the other side,
right,
or demonized the other side? Have you picked the side that basically says, gives you hope and prosperity and gives you a chance to be all we are? We're the greatest country on earth, the superpower of the world. And that means an awful lot from the standpoint of the rest of the world looking at the leadership.
Yeah.
So with all this being said, we're looking at everything. If we can force, and if all the people in this room were in the middle, and you're saying, listen, we're finding, we haven't decided who we're going to vote for yet, but we're trying to find a person that will defend the position we think grows America and keeps us on track. You're going to force the far left, the extreme left, and extreme right to come back to the reasonable, sensible middle. But right now, the business model is the further I can push you apart, the more that you will get involved. You'll send money because of this and that, and you're upset with that, and you really support that. And before you know it, you got a business model. The business model is to keep you divided. The business model in Washington is not to bring you together.
Yeah.
They don't do as well.
Are there enough votes on behalf of bringing people together, or the independents you're talking about who swing an election? Are there enough votes to elect a third-party candidate, or does a third-party candidate get in the race to ultimately affect an outcome for one of the other two sides?
Let me make sure all of you understand. I will never be involved to be a spoiler. I've never run a race that I didn't intend to win. So whatever I get involved with, I'm going to intend to win.
And if you intend to win this, the math has to work.
The math has to work. You have 35% of registered voters in America that are independent, 36% are Republicans, and I think about 38% are Democrats, and that 40% in that neighborhood there. So it's kind of evenly split, a third, a third, and a third.
And strategically, you're thinking you get the majority of the independents because they're dissatisfied with the two choices, and you pull some from both sides who think that you're a better alternative.
Well, right now you have both sides. They're polling, whether the polls are accurate or not, that whether Democrats and Republicans aren't really satisfied with what they have that's going to be offered to them. So if they're all looking and there's a better option, you know, but it's a very difficult situation.
Right.
The main thing is, can you get enough people that'll say enough's enough? Right. I'm not going to go to the extreme right. I'm not going to go to the extreme left. It basically continues to divide our country.
Yep.
It doesn't fare well for me or my family or my children and grandchildren. And it sure doesn't put a great stamp of approval on us for being the superpower of the world. You have to remember, the United States of America, there's no one willing to take our place. So if you think another country is going to step in and says, oh, we want to be America, we want to be the superpower of the world, there's not another nation, I don't care who you look at, China, Russia, all of them, whoever you're thinking of, they're not going to be a country that steps up and tries to feed the world in famine. They're not going to do that. They're not going to basically try to heal the world when there's a pandemic or needing vaccines and things that we do. We are the hope of the world because we've answered that call.
Right. And so the leadership of this country then matters.
That leadership, basically, superpower means more than that. You have to have super compassion, too. You can have a military, you can have all super economy. You better have super compassion to help your fellow human beings.
You and I are old enough to remember in the modern era, Senator, when we had third-party candidates in a general election. I remember John Anderson running. I remember Ross Perot running not once but twice. Yeah. None of those candidates came within a mile of winning the election. Why is the dynamic different today than it was either in 1980 or in 1992 and 1996?
There's never been and I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but I'm saying if you're hearing of a movement and people are very interested, it's because we've never seen this discourse before.
Things have gotten so bad that it creates an opening.
Let's just say this. Back in 1990, 91, 92 election when Ross Perot ran. The first time. Basically, you had two candidates. You had George H. Bush and you had Bill Clinton. Both pretty likable and approved of people that people liked. you have a situation now that we've never seen. It's not that they don't like them, but they've already formed an opinion. Yep. They're either for or against. And basically, 60%, 70% of both parties are saying, I'm not really that happy with this. And okay, is there something different?
Right.
I don't know what the future is going to like. I mean, it might unfold here. By Super Tuesday, you'll know what your choices are. I can assure you of that.
Yeah. The specifics, just to put a fine point on what you said about the public's view of this. Pew poll this week. Okay. This week, 63% of Americans said they're dissatisfied with the candidates who have emerged so far. 28% expressed unfavorable views of both parties, the highest share in 3 decades of polling. 25% did not feel well represented by either party. That is what you're referring to. That's the difference maker in this.
You hit it.
That's it. Right. Okay. What's the con or the cons of running? So you gave us the pros. The pros are we bring the country together, America leads, we solve this problem of the public being dissatisfied. Are you willing to acknowledge that there are cons to running?
Oh, my goodness. Anyone in this audience put their name on a ballot, I don't care what it's for. Could be for a council person in your hometown, could be for county commission, right. Could be Board of Education, whatever. That's difficult. And I admire everyone that does that because you're going to catch an awful lot of flack.
Right.
It's undeserving, maybe deserving at times, undeserving. When I first ran and I started seeing the ugliness of campaigning, because now in campaign you can say almost anything you want. And by the time the campaign's over, before you can correct it, it's already done the damage. So I told my children, when I first got involved, I said, let me tell you all something. You're going to hear an awful lot. And it's going to be a lot of criticism, and people who don't want me to win or want us to govern are going to do everything they can to stop it. But I said, let me tell you, it's a small price to pay, a real small price to pay. The sacrifices that a person puts themselves forward for public service, that's a small price for the great country we have and the democracy we have. Our forefathers and our founding fathers paid a greater price than we've ever paid. Trust me. And that's a small price. So I'm willing to take whatever I can to help the country. We're in trouble right now. We are in trouble, and I've never been more concerned than I am sitting here with you, Evan, talking about the challenges the United States have. But I will tell you this, we're the only country that can fix our problems. Yeah. There's not another country can fix what's wrong.
So when I asked you about cons, respectfully, I wasn't talking about cons for you. I was talking about cons for us. I mean, you know, it might be a con.
I missed that one.
Yeah. It might be a con for you to run because it's difficult for your family, inconvenient, you know, the difficulties of running for office. But do you see any potential cons to mounting a third-party
Let me ask you
challenge?
This. You have a wonderful, you have a very, very intelligent audience here. They're here because they're concerned.
Right.
Do you all believe you need more choices than what you have?
Yes.
So, and I'm not sure. I'm not telling you whether it's going to happen.
So no cons for us.
The more options you have as an American,
right.
We're pretty good at. If you give us the facts, we're pretty good at figuring out. We run our lives on a daily basis. You take risks. You make investments. You provide for your family. You make some tough decisions every day.
Right.
I trust the American public. If you give them enough options, they'll make the right decisions.
So you just said something to the effect of, I've never been more worried about the future of this country.
I'm not.
In July, you appeared at a No Labels town hall in New Hampshire with John Huntsman, the former Republican governor of Utah, and you said specifically, I'm trying to save the nation. I heard you say that at the time. Why do we need saving, and from whom?
First of all, if the only election that's a fair election is the one I win, that's not democracy. If the rule of law only pertains to you and not me, that's not democracy. And if I can basically destroy your faith in the orderly transfer of power, and you don't have faith in the judicial system, I'll guarantee you won't have the country we have today. That's why I'm concerned.
Right. But that only seemed to happen from one side, with respect, Senator. I mean, you're talking about claims of election fraud. You're talking about something other than a
January 6th was real. I was there.
Correct. But my point is, if the concern is that you're potentially enabling the architect of the things you just said, that's the anxiety among your critics.
Evan.
But right, I mean, just let's take the opportunity. Let's take the opportunity to confront the anxiety of your critics head on.
You're saying the anxiety is if there is a third party, whoever that may be. My vision of a third party would be, or my vision of basically another part of the electoral process.
Yes.
And I think if someone puts together a team, a so-called Republican, and a so-called Democrat, a president and vice president team, and a bipartisan to share basically leadership, bringing the country together, you have a better chance of doing that than we do basically from one party system to the other, because they're only playing to the parties. Now, you're saying that, oh, it's going to play to that person when I'm talking about, well, the election, if it's the only election is a fair election, you pretty much know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, you're only solving for one side based on what you said about why the nation needs to be saved.
But you're saying that basically you're taking it for granted that if somebody gets involved, all the votes are going to come from Joe Biden on the Democrat side and basically support the Republican side. You might be right, but I haven't seen that.
So
I haven't seen
so let me
that.
ask
It didn't happen with Ross Perot either.
Let me ask you specifically, have you been polling a race against the former president and the current president? What are you seeing?
No.
You have not done any polling.
I've not done polling. Now wait a minute. I haven't done that polling.
Well, but I mean, I'm trying to test the proposition, Senator, that you just put in front of us, which is that the votes don't necessarily come from one side.
Well, you're assuming that it's going to harm one side versus the other.
Well, I'm giving voice to what people have said in complaints made about your potential third-party bid.
Then why did Ross Perot basically take votes away from George H. Bush and hand it to Bill Clinton?
I think in that election, if we go back and remember what happened, the third-party candidate took votes away from the incumbent that got the incumbent's percentage down so far that the challenger was able to win.
I think if you look,
that is my memory of that race.
I think if you look at it, it was pretty much evenly divided.
Right.
What we saw. So it didn't really affect anything. Now, also, they weren't on all 50 ballots, okay? So they didn't do the homework as far as getting on. It's a difficult task. It's a long shot.
Is that why you've associated with no labels? You know, I know that your daughter, Heather, who I met today, who's here tonight, is said to be, the Washington Post reported her to be a big advocate for you joining a no labels.
No, my goodness, no. I joined no labels when
No, you run as a candidate with no labels, that she is an advocate for you running as a candidate. Washington Post reported this last week, that your daughter is strongly encouraging you to run as a no labels candidate with a Republican as your ticket mate.
My family is as concerned as I am. Can we bring both of the extremes back to the middle? And we've accomplished what we're trying to accomplish. Can we bring them back?
However you do it.
However, responsible, reasonable, making decisions that you make every day.
Right.
Okay? Right now, we're not.
Right.
We don't care basically about the border security. We don't really care about the finances of our country. And I guarantee you, the finances of this country will take us down before any other foreign country will ever take us down.
So is there a possibility, Senator, that you would run as a third-party candidate simply as an independent, as Ross Perot did, as John Anderson did, and not associate with no labels or any other existing organization?
I don't take anything off the table, and I don't put anything on the table.
Right.
I'm not at that point yet, and I really am not.
Right.
I'm trying to do the job I do every day. I'm right now trying to keep from a government shutdown. There's a lot of people going to be harmed, and it's all over politics. Here's the thing. We already made a deal. The deal was made basically when Kevin McCarthy and the president 3 months ago made a deal. And you know what? It passed overwhelmingly in both the House and the Senate. Now, both sides don't want to honor the deal. So a deal is only a deal until it's not a deal in Washington. Makes no sense to me at all. And you have the House right now, and Kevin McCarthy's getting torn apart, and you got 10 or 12 of his Republican far right that's threatening this and threatening that. I go back to the old Tip O'Neill. I mean, there was a time when bipartisanship basically ruled together in a balanced way. If Kevin just reaches across the aisle and just says, fine, I'm going to need some Democrats to help us run this government, I think it would be wonderfully accepted by the people of America. And you don't have to be pure.
But he won't be Speaker for another day if he does.
Why would that be?
Senator, you know that the choice, just since you brought up the Speaker and the shutdown, let's stay there for a second. If he shuts the government down, that's a problem. If he aligns with Democrats to get a budget passed, they'll make a motion to vacate the speakership.
They can make that motion if he has Democrats to vote for him to keep that speakership. That's what I'm saying. He's gotten to the point. They got a gun to his head.
They got a gun to his head, yeah.
Okay. He's got to make a decision. I like Kevin. I work with Kevin. I try to reach out and help everybody I possibly can.
Yeah.
I don't look at Democrats and Republicans as my enemy. I look at all of them as my colleagues and friends. So he has to lead. And he has to have help. And Democrats have to step to the plate. And they're going to have to help him. And I think they're willing to do it. Jim Clyburn said it best last night. I think he was on one of the stations I watched. And he says, just try it. What you got right now is not working.
Right.
And to shut this thing down is not, it's really going to be detrimental to our country. And it doesn't fare well. Our adversaries around the world, They don't think democracy. They think we've run our gambit on.
Well, it looks dysfunctional at best.
Well, it does. It does. But let me tell you, it never has been pretty, but it's worked.
Right. So let's talk about the decision tree, because I mentioned in the introduction, Senator, not just one option for you potentially, but several. Again, the Washington Post, in the same article that said that your daughter's encouraging a no-labels run for president, they said you're considering 3 options in front of you. One is running for president as a candidate for no labels. You've expanded that to say, well, maybe not no labels, but as an independent. A second option is running for reelection.
Let me make sure you understand.
Yes.
No labels is like the RNC or DNC. No labels is putting a group together that they have, a candidate has a vehicle to run on.
Sure, but you said a moment ago you might run as an independent.
Well,
without...
if you can't, you got to get on the ballots.
Right.
If they have the ballot access, that'll be the ballot access you use.
Right, but Ross Perot got on the ballot. And John Anderson got
He didn't get on all states. He was not able to compete with electoral college.
Okay, so you're confirming that if you ran as a third-party candidate, it would be under the no labels banner.
They said he was one of the best interviewers in the country.
Well, I just, with respect.
And I believe it. I believe it.
If you came all this way, I'm sure as hell going to pin you down. Okay? So no labels would be the vehicle that you would use to get on the ballot.
There's not another movement in the country that's trying to get the signatures that allows ballot access.
Okay. So then that's option 1. That's option 1. Option 2 is running for re-election in West Virginia, but as an independent. Says the Post.
There's a consideration for that.
That is.
That's a consideration.
Are you considering running for re-election as a Democrat?
Consideration.
That's a consideration. And then the third option is retiring from politics.
Consideration.
That is, okay. You know, look, Senator, the theory is that in the state of West Virginia...
Which one you all like the best?
The theory is that in the state of West Virginia, where you and I earlier today visited, we talked about the fact that you are the only Democrat to be elected from West Virginia federally right now, right? There is no other office held by a Democrat, correct?
Donald Duck should be able to win as a Republican in my state.
Right. So my question...
And sometimes they call me Donald Duck.
My question to you would be, if you ran for re-election as a Democrat, would you not be putting yourself... What did you say that West Virginia is? R plus what?
R40.
R40.
We're the reddest state in the nation, us and Wyoming.
R40. Why would you run into the buzzsaw of that problem, running as a Democrat for re-election?
You know what, Evan? I've never been afraid of losing. So if you're not afraid of losing and you think you're doing the right thing, then you give it all you got. And I've never intended to lose when I get involved.
So it's possible that you would run as a Democrat?
It's possible I would run as a Democrat, and if I run as a Democrat in West Virginia, I would intend absolutely to win.
Right.
Because I think we have a record to win on.
Do you think you'd have a better chance of running as an independent?
That's to be said. We're looking at all that.
So game theory that out for us. Tell us what you're thinking about.
Well, basically, you're saying let me just tell you about West Virginians. I was asked by a Democrat one time in 2014 when the state really changed. My state changed quicker than any other state in the nation has changed. We were totally, like when I was governor, I had 78 out of 100 House of Delegate members. I had 78 Democrats and 12 Republicans. It was unbelievable.
How many do you have? How many Democrats in the legislature now?
Now 11. No, 9. I'm sorry.
9.
Yeah. So it's flipped completely. We used to have, at one time when I was the governor, I had, out of 34 state senators, I had 33 Democrats and 1 Republican.
How about today?
Now they've got 31 Republicans and 3 Democrats.
Right. So this
tells you what we're dealing with.
This is the state you're talking about.
Let me just tell you, the person asked, what happened to Democrats in West Virginia? I says, nothing. They want to know what happened to the Democrats in Washington. They've done every heavy lifting thing they could. They've mined the coal, made the steel, built the guns and ships. They've worked extremely hard. They're totally loyal. We've lost more people in the military. We've shed more blood and lost more lives for the cause of freedom than almost any other state. That little state of mine has given her all. Now we're not good enough, we're not clean enough, we're not smart enough for Washington Democrats. And that's what happened to them.
So you think the National Democratic Party...
It's a bad brand in West Virginia.
...is a bad brand. What exactly is the problem with the brand? I want to understand, what is it about being a Democrat? You may stay with the party, but what is it about being a Democrat in West Virginia that is so distasteful?
Well, you could ask, what I just described to you is what they tell me every day, and they want to know why I'm still a Democrat. And I said, if a label thinks, if you think a label would change me, identity for a party, where it be a D, an R, or an I, if that's going to change who I am, it's not. They've known me long enough, okay, and so many different, as you mentioned, all the different, I had a hard time keeping a job, so I was House of Delegates, I was state senator. Let me tell you why. I only want to try to make things better and help people. So when I was one of 100 of the House of Delegate member, I'm thinking, boy, if I was a state senator, I'd be one of 34. I could help 3 times as many people. And man, if I became governor, I'd be one of 1. I could really help people in my state. That's how I've looked at every stepping stone I've had. And I get just to the point now that where it just makes it so difficult. And then when I got to the Senate, I'm thinking, boy, did I make a mistake. Why did I? This is not.
You thought you should have stayed back home.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Still have those memories coming back.
So on the Senate, Senator, the consideration, as people perceive this race, the consideration is, will the Republicans who've not settled on a nominee nominate as their candidate for the Senate the current governor, Jim Justice, who switched from Democrat to Republican at the beginning of Donald Trump's term, or Congressman Alex Mooney, who people believe you may have a better chance of beating than Governor Justice? Is that going to factor into your decision, whether you have a contest or you know the one candidate? My
opponent has never factored in because I never run against an opponent. I run for something. I don't run against it. If I got to come and tell you I'm better than that person, you better vote for me because that person is really bad.
But you have an opinion about who you could beat more easily, don't you?
Well, I'm going to run the same campaign no matter what. I'm going to basically run on the record I have and what I perform for the state of West Virginia. I think people know me. They don't look at me as Joe Manchin, a Democrat. They say, that's Joe Manchin. He's been this. He's been our governor. We like him or we don't. So with that being said, Jim Justice and I have known each other for 50 years. You know, he was always a big supporter of mine. In 2016, he says, Joe, tell me if you're going to come back and run for governor. If you're not, I might want to run. And I said, Jim, sure, I'll tell you. And I decided, well, I better stay where I'm at because I still had 2 years left on my term. I didn't want to leave the term early. And he says, okay. He says, I'm going to run as a Democrat because I like people. I said, that's a pretty good reason.
Okay.
And then we did everything we could to help him get elected. He won as a Democrat at that time.
And it took him how long to switch parties?
7 months, switched over, never called and told me he was doing it.
Right. So have you considered possibly coming back home if he goes for the Senate and that governor's office is open? Have you considered going back?
I've always thought that was the best job I've ever had.
Yeah.
Being an executive, if you really enjoy being an executive to where you can really put people in the right place that have the right mentality to do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Just serve. You know, there's a difference between public service and self-service. And I've always said, in my state of West Virginia, what they really have is a good gut. They don't have a whole lot more, but they got one heck of a gut. Like most rural America has a good gut. Rural Texas has a good gut. And people can shake your hand, look in your eyes, and see your soul. And with that being said, it's something that would be fascinating, but it's hard to return. We had very good success.
That's not really a consideration.
No, I have ruled that out.
Okay.
Maybe I will regret that, but I ruled that.
So you're considering running for re-election as an independent or as a Democrat? You did not say I'm considering running as a Republican.
No.
You gave us your critique of the Democratic Party. Give us your critique of the Republican Party.
There's so many good people and so many dear friends of mine in the Republican Party, and always been. I've never looked at a Republican as my enemy. They're my friends. They have a different idea.
But you're not becoming one. Why?
Well, I'm not sure I'll become either one.
Right, but you're
why,
not considering becoming a Republican.
Well,
why?
Basically, if they're drawn to a candidate and became totally engulfed in this candidate in this mega movement, I just have a hard time accepting that because it's not what I was raised and how I was raised, what I believe in.
It's the substance of Trumpism or it's Trump himself?
Well, it's one and the same, isn't it?
You tell me.
Well, Trump.
Because there are candidates in the party, Senator, there are candidates in the primary who are running as Trumpism without Trump. So maybe it's not the one and the same.
It's a shame. It really is. There's just...
You think the party has become a party of one man?
Truly.
You do?
It'll be an autocracy, too.
Right.
So
you believe it would be a danger to re-elect him?
Oh, yes.
I mean, Senator, this gets back to the thing that we were talking about before. The people who have anxiety, whether you think they're right or not, that if you got in the race as a third-party candidate, that you would tip the election to him. That is the question we're litigating. You voted twice to impeach him. Even Liz Cheney didn't vote twice to impeach him.
Let me tell you about impeaching. I told the Democrats, do not impeach him. You will embolden him. Censor him. We might be able to get the votes to censor him and slow him down a little bit.
To censure him in the Congress, yes.
Yeah, because when you have an impeachment, you take an oath, basically, and the evidence that is supplied to you, and you look at the evidence.
Right.
And you have a responsibility to vote and basically a decision on the evidence.
Yep.
The evidence was overwhelming.
And you voted twice to impeach him?
I voted twice because the evidence was overwhelming what the charges were.
Your specific quote was, his seditious actions and words that threatened our democracy. Seditious.
Still do.
Still think he is a seditious, his actions.
Well, let me tell you, January 6th, gang, I was there. Now, me, I like everybody. I want to go out and meet him. If you're mad at me, I said, let's talk. Maybe we can work this out. So I heard all the banging on the doors, and I'll never forget, we're in the Senate chambers. They brought us back because then they protested the vote in the House, and we had to come back to the Senate chambers. So we're there. And all of a sudden, the Sergeant of Arms closed our big wooden doors inside because we heard a lot of banging and a lot of noise. Well, I've been in the state legislature when people were getting rowdy, and that's nothing new to me. And I'm thinking, oh, hell, let's just go out and talk to them. We can work this out.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't let me do that. Anyway, I got to tell you, do you remember Christmas Vacation when Chevy Chase and they're all trying to make up, and then here comes a SWAT team flying through the windows? I swear to God. We're sitting there, and all of a sudden, within 5 minutes, I mean, this SWAT team comes in and says, you people are out of here. You people are out of here. And they rushed us out of there and took us down the back corridor into a safe room. And thank God our parliamentarian picked up the ballot boxes.
Right. I mean, it could, we talk about how bad it was, and
it was so close to being so bad.
But it could have been even that much worse. But again, Senator, this is really the point.
Okay.
Even if there is a small chance that you might enable leadership of that sort that got us there, isn't that too big a risk to take?
Well, I'm not going to take any risk to jeopardize my country and democracy that we have. I won't do that. So I can tell you one thing. But to sit back and do nothing and allow the country to keep going this way and this way when I know that one vote, I can tell you, sometimes one vote makes a big difference. Yeah. And it did for 2 years. And the only thing I try to do, I've always said this, if I can go home and explain it. I was raised in a little coal mining town of 600 people. And these are the toughest, roughest, good people, good-hearted. They do anything for you. But they expected you to do the right thing. They held you accountable and responsible.
That's your focus group.
If I was playing in a game and I did bad playing in the game, I was afraid to go uptown the next day because they expected more from me. When I was a kid, if I got in trouble uptown on the playground or something, I got 3 whippings before I got home.
Right.
Just the way things were. And I expected it, so it held me accountable. And I've said this, you are who you are by where you were raised, how you were raised, and who raised you. It never leaves you, good or bad.
Yep.
And if you had someone that you had unconditional love, no matter how bad you screwed up, you were raised as a privileged child to have that in your life. And I had that. Raised in a 3-room garage apartment between the tracks and the creek, and I thought I was the richest kid in the world because I had somebody love me.
Yeah.
Every day.
There was just an implied critique of Donald Trump. I mean, you had.
No, I know Donald Trump.
You had me at seditious. I want to know what the critique of Joe Biden is. Joe Biden is currently the president. You served with him in the Senate.
I've known him for a long time.
You know him for a long time.
He's a good man.
What is your critique of Joe Biden?
He's a good man.
That makes a member of his own party think, I need to mount a campaign against this guy.
No, it's not mounting. Everyone thinks if you're running against somebody. You can run for something.
As a practical matter, Senator, you are running against him. Come on.
I am not.
You're running to defeat him.
I'm not. I'm running to basically change the direction. I'm running to change the direction that this country's in. If I run, I would be running to change the direction we're going.
Let me ask it another way. If you were satisfied with him, you would not be running.
Do we have any other topics?
No. We've got a half hour.
He's like a dog on a bone, boy.
Yeah, I am. Well, so can you tell us what your concerns are about the president?
I think basically the Joe Biden that I knew and I've known for many, many years was kind of a center-left, okay?
Yeah.
I can work with center-left, I can work with center-right. I think that basically a lot of the people he has gone really far left.
Okay.
Further than I can stomach. And they know it. And I've been at them, I try to work with them, I try to sit down, and I continue to. I have said this, every one of us should pray every night that our president does well. I don't care whether you like him, whether you voted for him, whether it's a different party. When Barack Obama was there, when Donald Trump was there, and now with Joe Biden, in the position I'm in, I should do something every day to try to make it better.
Yep.
But don't be afraid to speak truth to power. And when a president, you're sitting in the White House, here I am, a little kid from Farmington, West Virginia, a little coal mining town. Here I am so many times, but the first times I can recall. And since 2020, and we've had a split Senate, never in the history of our country, in 234 years since we have formed this government of ours, have we ever had a 50-50 Senate for this period of time. So you all, and we all live through history. I just happened to get caught in the middle. I never changed how I voted. It's always been a little different than what the Democrats or Republicans and back. I try to look at what would make it better. So I got caught. So he called me over. And when you're sitting there, now here you are, and it's so surreal. You go into the Oval Office, and the president makes everybody leave, and just you and the president are sitting there. And we start talking, and we talk about all the old good days and things we did, and how we know each other, and this and that, what we agree, and what our families and things of that sort. And all of a sudden, we get down to the nitty-gritty, where a piece of legislation he'd like, and he knows that I'm not in favor.
Yep.
And you're sitting there, and this is what happens.
Puts his hand on you.
He says, Evan, your country needs you. Your country needs you.
Yep.
Now, that's pretty heavy. And I didn't know what the hell to say. I'm thinking, wow. Well, I said, Mr. President, country needs you too. We're in this together.
Right.
We are in this together.
Yeah.
And we tried. We really did. Never sometimes it gets a little, if you can't agree to disagree and do it respectfully.
Right.
And I'll never forget, he was talking about a piece of legislation, and we were there sitting, and he said, Joe, this is my legislation. I got to have it. I need your support. Boom, boom, boom. I said, Mr. President, this is not your legislation. This is the far left. I've been hearing this for 10 years.
Yep.
We went back and forth, back and forth.
You want to tell us what the subject matter was?
Well, I think you pretty much know.
Does it rhyme with climate change?
Well, that's been a big one, but BBB was bigger than that. I mean, that thing was way, way out there.
Right.
And I said, sir, listen. And we went back and forth, and he says, I got to have it, Joe, got to have it. And I said, Mr. President, you're telling me this is what you campaigned on. I want to say this in the most respectful way. You lost my state by 40 points. 40 percentage points you got beat in my state. If this was your platform, it didn't do too well in West Virginia. Now, how do you expect me to go home and explain it?
Well, at the end of the
now,
day...
Let me tell you what he knows. He's been around. He was a senator for 35 years, like all of us been around. He says, I got it.
He understood.
He understood.
Because at the end of the day, you vote your district, as they say, right? Your district happens to be your state.
Well, I got to be honest with you on that. I do everything I can every day for my state, and I think all of your senators, and I work with everybody.
Right.
But I've always felt this. If my country does well, my state's going to be okay. Now, if my state, and all I'm worried about is my state and my state only, and I could give a darn about my country because I take an oath to defend and protect the Constitution.
Right.
I'm going to be in trouble in my state sooner or later.
Let me ask you about the president's age. That has come up repeatedly,
now you're getting personal.
Repeatedly this weekend. Look, it's come up repeatedly from both Democrats and Republicans in talking about the 2024 election. I heard it with my own ears.
Yeah.
President will soon be 81. Donald Trump is 77. You at 76 are a relative spring chicken. Right?
I'm the young kid on the block.
Right. There was a poll out just this week that said 79% of Americans would like to see some kind of upper age limit on elected officials. Do you believe the president is too old to serve again?
I'm not going to make that decision. That's the voters to make that decision. That'd be up to the president to make his decision whether he feels he can. It's a daunting job.
Do you believe that the public is considering that among the things that they're considering when they look to elect?
It's in the news every day. Why would they not?
Right.
So here's the thing. Do you believe there should be term limits? I believe there should be term limits. I believe there should be a term limit on Supreme Court. Should be 1 6-year term for the president and 2 for us. 2 terms.
So you would support term limits for Supreme Court justices if it came up in the United
Absolutely.
States Senate?
I would introduce it too. I'd be a co-sponsor. I just think, and I think on us, I think the 2 terms, 12 years is enough. 12 years is enough.
So you're going to be 12 years in by the next election. If 12 years
I see where this is going. No.
You said it. I didn't say it.
I walked into this one, didn't I?
You sure did. You held the door open, Senator. All right. So I'm going to read you something from the Wall Street Journal, August 30th. Senator Joe Manchin and his daughter Heather Manchin are pitching major political donors on a nascent effort to promote centrist policies and candidates that is projected to cost more than $100 million. Correct?
Wait a minute.
That's a quote from the Wall Street Journal.
Well, you can't believe everything you read.
In the Wall Street Journal?
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
No. Here's the thing about it. Sometimes you could be... Heather is as committed as I'm committed. This is something in 501c4. I'm not. She's putting something together, trying to bring, and working with other groups and organizations that's trying to find a centrist movement in the country.
Right.
This is a centrist movement. And if that centrist movement has enough power to it, I'll guarantee you'll move people off the right and left. How many times do I hear on both, I can't say anything, or I've got to vote this way because if I don't, I'll be primaried? They're scared. They got no protection.
All the time.
The middle has no protection.
Right.
You expect us to do the right thing.
Right.
You expect that. But boy, I'll tell you, when the middle's not speaking out and the middle doesn't have the clout to give you any support and protection,
right,
you will gravitate right and just keep your mouth shut and stand over.
So something is happening, even if it's not exactly as the Wall Street Journal said, but something is going on to
There's a movement.
There's a movement. Okay.
There's a movement.
Let's assume that we agree that's a good idea.
Okay.
Isn't the problem the system of how we elect people? Because you can't win an election in a gerrymandered society as a centrist. Governor Sununu was here on Thursday night. He said he thought gerrymandering reform was absolutely a priority, should be one for this country. Because if you don't have reform of redistricting, then you end up making primaries into general elections, and there is no incentive whatsoever for people to be elected in the center.
Well, we're talking only about the House, the 435 members of the House.
Right.
There's no gerrymandering in the Senate because we run for the whole state.
Right.
So the 100 members that are in the Senate run as a whole state. I have said on gerrymandering, we have the computer ability to program a computer that will give us a balanced approach, whether it's going to be the economy, whether it's going to be race, whether it's going to be so many factors. And then if the humans want to write their own and basically draw their line, if they're staying within 3% of the computer model, I'm fine with that.
You're trying to take the politics out of redistricting.
You have to. You really have.
Is that I mean, I think it's a virtue. One of the people who chaired a committee on redistricting here in the Texas legislature once said to me, taking the politics out of redistricting is like taking the calories out of fried chicken.
Well, then that's let me tell you, that's exactly why people are talking about term limits.
Yeah.
If I can't change that, maybe at least I can get rid of you.
Right. So you don't think that...
I had a woman, I got to tell you this story.
Okay.
I never had been, years ago, I was never a big fan of redistricting because, of term limits. And I thought, well, there's so many people have experience. It takes a while to get the experience in this and that. And the woman says, well, no, I disagree with you, Joe. I think you should have them. And I said, well, tell me why, Mary. Why do you think? She says, well, let's just look at it this way. If we had you to 2 terms, 2 6-year terms, maybe we get one good term out of you. I couldn't argue with that. I swear to God, I had no comeback. I couldn't basically say, oh, you're so wrong. Nothing I could say. I said, you know what? She's right. So I changed.
So you don't think non-competitive elections are the problem rather than whether people are inclined to be centrist? Wouldn't it be better if we had competitive elections so people actually had to compete for votes? That's
what we've been talking about all along. You want more choice. You want to have more options to choose from. We're back to where we started.
Okay. I want to ask you about a couple of issues before we go to questions from the audience. This is Mountain State...
Oh, please, hurry.
Yeah. Mountain State Spotlight, the nonprofit news organization in West Virginia that is very much like the Texas Tribune, reported this week that you helped kill the expanded child tax credit, and as a consequence of that, more West Virginia kids are living in poverty. They reported 1/4 of West Virginia's children are living in poverty thanks to your decision to stymie federal legislation to expand the child tax credit. The child poverty rate in West Virginia went up from 20.7% in 21 to 25% last year, and there's a cliff coming where maybe 70,000 child care centers are about to close. And they put that on you.
Let me give you the facts now so you'll know the rest of the story.
Yeah.
First of all, in 2017, the child tax credits, was gone from $1,000 to $2,000 for people that made under $200,000 So that just about took care of everybody in West Virginia. And then 400,000 if it was a joint return, went to 2,000.
Okay.
That's still in place. That never went away, okay? Now they're telling you, well, we're putting everybody back in poverty because we did this, or that wasn't a child tax credit that was in the American Rescue Plan, ARP. That was basically a subsidy, child subsidy, because you didn't have to make any money at all.
So
we were just sending
the thing
money.
you opposed was something else.
Well, first of all, sending just for the sake of having children, we want to make sure there's other ways that we can support those children if you are in a situation where you can't work or whatever. But the poor child should not go without food and this and that. So let me just tell you what we did. In fiscal year 20, Medicaid, just Medicaid that helps people who have challenges, was $458 billion in America. That's how much we dedicated to it. During basically COVID, and today, it's now $608 billion. Mm-hmm. So that went up over $150 billion. The SNAP program, which is the Food Nutritional Program,
yes,
basically in 2020 and fiscal year 20 was $79 billion.
Yes.
Now it's $119 billion. Now, when you talk about all food nutrition programs, which we have for Energy Express and all that, in fiscal 20 was $109 billion. Now it's $184 billion. This is just so wrong. They don't give you all the point. You know, they may say,
your point is maybe you oppose something, but we're doing these other things.
We have always done the other things, and we did a lot more of them in the last 2 years than ever in the history of this.
So you believe the criticism of you on the child tax credit is unfounded?
Well, it's so wrong. It's not accurate. They're making people believe it. We're just going to throw kids out. We were sending checks. If you had a child less than 6 years of age, you got a check for $300. Whether you made a penny or whether you paid a penny in taxes.
Right.
So $300. If you had a child from 6 to 17, it was $250 a month. Every month, like clockwork. And that's just what was done, okay? Now, the child tax credits was still there. And it's been in it. But a child tax credit is you have to work and you have to pay taxes and you can deduct that. And that's all.
So you're talking about something else.
Yeah, so these are supplemental. We're taking care of those in need. We're trying to feed everybody that we possibly can.
Yep.
And we've almost doubled the amount of money we're spending. So it's not fair to say we just throw it out to the wolves. It's not.
Let me move over quickly to college sports. It's football Saturday.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We pay much attention to
and
this.
let me tell you, I'm rooting for Texas tonight. I want you to know, too.
Somebody ought to look at the Baylor UT score and shout it out at some point. UT is winning? Okay. Peace. All right, that's good. All right.
And West Virginia won, so we're all happy tonight so far.
College sports. You and Senator Tuberville of Alabama introduced a bill to protect student athletes by creating a national standard for the name, image, likeness deal, the NIL.
Right.
Would you explain what you're trying to accomplish?
Very quickly. I can tell you very quickly.
Yes.
First of all, I had the opportunity to get a scholarship playing football at WVU way back. So I know student athlete. The most important thing of a student athlete is get an education. That is not the premise today. The other thing is, so we wanted to put guardrails back on. If you have that type of a value, and with all the different social medias, you can sell your services, get yourself an agent and go out and do whatever you can.
Yeah.
But don't use your services and go to Baylor, Texas Tech, and Texas and say, if you give me $300,000, I'll come to your school.
Put yourself up for the highest bid.
That is wrong. That is not. And what's going to happen, it'll suck so much money out of the system, then Title IX sports or non-revenue sports, and mostly women's sports, is going to be left behind. It's going to be very hard to support them. So I said, put the guardrails on. And now we have kids, you might be able to, let's say I'm recruiting somebody, I'm a coach, and I recruit a quarterback. And I get that quarterback in there, and I says, doesn't have the talent and doesn't have the speed or have the arm strength, but boy, he'd be one heck of a defensive back.
Right.
He says, oh, sorry, coach, I'm leaving you. I'm going to go portal. I'm leaving. Okay, you give me no chance at all to develop this child. And they're going back and forth like ping pongs, and I'll guarantee you they're not graduating. So what happened to the student athlete? Now it just becomes the athlete.
Right.
Okay, and that's not our job.
So the NIL went too far.
The NIL just took all the guardrails, nothing. Just wild, wild west. And we're trying to put the guardrails back on.
Can you pass that bill?
We're trying very hard because we have some people says, well, coaches are making all this money and there's so much money in the sports system that the kids should get something. I'm fine. When I was playing, we got $30 a month. They call it laundry money. $30. And I'm thinking, well, back, I can tell you how many years ago, that was a long time ago. But we thought, it's pretty good. I didn't know I was supposed to get that.
Right.
And now, I don't know what, but Division I, so you'll know. If they recruit your son or grandson or whatever into college sports, Division I sports, that child is guaranteed 4 years of an education. They cannot. If he doesn't play a down. If he
gets hurt in the first week.
First week, they have to honor that contract.
Right.
But that same child can go there and leave anytime they want to. I said, that's not right. Give me a chance to develop a child. Now, in the third year, if they haven't developed into it and they're unhappy, they can go anywhere they want to. And we're just trying to make some common sense out of this thing.
Since you're working so closely with Senator Tuberville, can you get us some leadership in our military branches?
So hard.
Do you think he's gone off the rails on that?
Well, I've talked. Coach Tuberville, like I say, I get along with everybody and I like him.
Yeah.
And I know he's hard. He's a good guy, and we get along and everything. I said, Tommy, he's so, the abortion issue, what happened, this is all about the Department of Defense. When Roe v. Wade, when it was repealed, it left everybody in limbo. So every state's going this and that. So if you have military bases and all that, and the Department of Defense took it a position, boom, they said, hey, if a female in your base has to have this type of services from abortion, whatever, then we will pay to go to the state who will perform it. And we'll give them leave and pay for that. Well, that went through him, and he says, nope, that's not what it is. I'm not going to be. So he put the hold on because of that policy.
Yep.
And he said, they need to repeal the policy. And I said, Tommy, now wait. Now, 1984, you came up and you said Joe Biden voted for the policy that the Department of Defense adopted in 1984, which said, in case of rape, incest, and life of the mother, then the military would pay. Because up until then, we always had the Hyde Amendment, which prevented federal dollars,
right,
but not for military. So the military had an exception on just that. And I said, Tommy, if you get a vote just on that, could you release your holds? And he thought about it, and I thought we were moving in that direction. And then it didn't happen. And this should have been solved a long time ago. Put it on the floor. If we stay there all night, vote. And if you take whatever the vote comes out, it is what it is. You had your say. Go home and say you fought for the good fight, and you either won or you didn't win. Because if he passed it, then the 84 went back in to where it's been forever.
Yeah, but he's not doing that right now.
Not right now.
Not now. Okay, last question before we go to the audience.
Okay.
Texas and West Virginia have at least one thing in common. We have significant parts of our state that are rural.
Mm-hmm.
Rural communities often don't have the resources necessary
Correct.
for the people in those communities to be leveled up in a way that is comparable to the rest of us in our states. I know that you have particularly focused on broadband access in rural West Virginia at the federal level to try to bring dollars home, as that is finally happening here in Texas. Talk about that.
First of all, in 1936, FDR basically passed for rural electrification. If we can put a wire to everybody's home, no matter where you live, and electrify it, can't we at least get you high-speed internet? It makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what happened. The FCC, and this Chairman Pyatt, the gentleman, he's a good guy, but we just totally disagreed. And I was on Commerce at the time. We were fighting back and forth. And I said, listen, your maps are wrong. And what happened, the FCC has maps. And they say, well, let's say they take Southwest Texas. And they say, well, you guys are all covered. Look here. Their map showed it. Well, in West Virginia, they were showing that we were covered, and I knew we weren't. So I was the only, out of 535 Congress people, I was the only one that challenged the maps. I went after them hard. And I started basically public service announcement. Please do this. We showed them how to do your test on your phone to see what type of speed you had, if any.
Yep.
And he was going to put out what they called one of our major funding bills. And I says no, and I stopped him. And I said, your maps are so wrong. There's over 66 million people live in what's classified as rural America. Rural Texas, rural West Virginia, Appalachia, rural. And basically, they always get left behind because you don't have the population to where if the federal government's going to spend $100 million, they want to show we helped this many people.
Right.
Okay? Well, guess what? We're not dense as far as population in rural America, so you don't have the numbers that show that you had a good piece of public policy that really covered everything. So I start basically pulling out 20% for rural America. If 20% of the people live in rural America, then 20% of the federal dollars
funding
should go to rural America. So we made them challenge the maps, And I swear, if you're not getting service, you ought to raise all holy hell, because there's enough money in the system that every American should have high-speed internet within the next 5 years.
All right, good. Senator, thank you. All right, Matt Ewalt, my colleague, is going to join. Is that right? Is Matt coming on stage? We've got some questions from the audience, and we'll be happy to bring them into the conversation.
50 years ago, Colorado and West Virginia had nearly equal populations. Colorado is now 3 times larger, while West Virginia has fewer residents. What has West Virginia done wrong?
Well, we haven't diversified enough as quickly as we should have, or basically shown that there's other opportunities. We had hardworking people. They were mostly mining, and we've been like you all been, but you know, everyone thinks that oil,
yep.
Right? Texas oil, you have more renewable energy in Texas than about any place in the country.
So you didn't create enough economic opportunity?
We didn't diversify the way it should have been because of the opportunities people had. Manufacturing was big, heavy manufacturing. After NAFTA, things started going different places in the world. Okay, the NAFTA agreement we had, and now we have the USMC. So what happens is this IRA bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, has done more to balance, and people have been, they say, well, it's a liberal bill because the president says it's a renewable. It's not a red bill, it's not a blue bill, and it's definitely not a green bill. We're producing more energy in America today than we ever have in the history of our country. It's hard to believe. If you listen to the news, you don't hear that. You know, 4.6 billion barrels of oil will be produced. We've never done that in America.
That's the IRA is the Inflation Reduction Act, right?
Inflation Reduction Act.
Didn't you just call that a radical climate plan?
Who?
You.
I've called it basically what they're trying to implement. There's a difference. We can pass a piece of legislation, then once you pass it, it goes to determine how it's going to be implemented.
Right.
It went to the Department of Energy, then it goes back to Treasury, and they tell you how you can use your tax credits.
Right.
They're trying to blow it out of proportion. I says, no. We wrote to, I know exactly, because my Energy Committee wrote the bill.
Right.
And basically, we wanted energy security. You cannot be a superpower of the world unless you have energy independence.
And you think they're taking the bill and turning it into something?
They're trying to implement something they didn't pass. So I'm holding their feet to the fire. Right. Taking them to court, and I continue to do that, to hold their feet to the fire. But it is doing what it's supposed to. We brought more investments back. My state is now turning around. We've got battery factories coming in. We have all different types. We're using our coal and our gas cleaner than ever before. We're producing, in America, basically, we've reduced emissions. As a superpower of the world to reduce emissions. And I tell people this, you cannot eliminate your way to a clean environment. You can innovate your way and the rest of the world will follow it. They won't follow elimination.
Yeah.
Because there's still 600 million people in the world that have no energy whatsoever.
Right.
And those people that do, India's coming on with first generation. They could care less what's come out of a smokestack. They just want electricity.
So the goal here, just to go to the question again.
The goal is we have to diversify, and we are doing it now, and it's going to change.
And you hope you attract more population.
It's changing rapidly.
As a consequence, okay.
You said no labels is like the other major political parties, but it is not subject to the same rules. It is a dark money group refusing to disclose who is financing it and is not required to do so. How could you gain voters' trust with a lack of transparency?
Oh, I love that question. Dark money, right?
Yeah.
You want to know where dark money is? The Democrat Party have $1.7 billion of dark money you've never seen or heard of. The Republican Party have $1.5 billion that you never heard or seen.
Right, but everybody else is doing it, so it's okay to do it.
No, it's not okay. The bottom line is the code.
So you think you have to change the law before you can?
You're going to have to change the code. If you're expecting, and the dark money, basically you're talking about 501c4s. They don't have to report.
Right.
That's what it is. You need to, there's a business, and that's what I'm upset about. The parties now have become a business entity that's truly a profitable business entity.
Right.
It's not a policy driven, it's business driven. And I've got figures we could show you all day long. It's just wrong. And that's what they're saying. Well, here's this little startup, no labels, okay? This is chicken feed compared to what's been going on.
Is there no way to mount a serious third-party challenge and be totally transparent about the sources of funding?
Well, everyone should be transparent.
Right, but couldn't you decide to step up and say, I'm going to do
Oh,
this?
yeah, so they get their brains beaten before they get started.
Yeah. Is it impossible to fund a campaign if you're that transparent?
I guarantee you one thing, if Democratic Party and Republican Party says, here's our books, we're going to show you where the money comes from.
Yeah.
They got profitable organizations running their money, taking billions of dollars and hundreds of millions of dollars as far as in
right.
fees off the front. Everyone should open up. There should be demand, but that's Citizens United. Let's get rid of Citizens United. Get money out of it.
Can I ask a question, please? I mean, we have 2 minutes left. We have other audience questions. But if it took getting the filibuster reformed to get rid of Citizens United, would you be willing to do it?
I'll never get rid of the filibuster. You can put me on a railroad tracks, or you get rid of the filibuster, you've lost democracy. The only thing that keeps us different is the United States Senate, which is the most deliberate body in the world, and the only thing that does that is because we have to work in a bipartisan. You take the filibuster away, we become a glorified house.
So better
You've
to
got
have,
nothing. You'll be flip-flopping like this.
Better to have Citizens United than filibuster reform.
What's that?
Better to have Citizens
No,
United.
it's better to have politicians who have enough guts to get rid of Citizens United.
Yeah. Within the context of the current,
That's exactly. If you think we're going to break it every time something goes wrong and you don't like it, then we're no different. You know, you'll be a banana republic. If you think that every 2 years, it's going to, every law that you put in today, there's no consistency. There's no business going to say, I'm afraid to invest here because even though it looks good today, it'll change in 2 years. The Senate basically, we take whatever, and George Washington said it best. They asked him, can you imagine, here's a filibuster, you know, I'll give you the best explanation. Filibuster was designed this way. Can you imagine that George Washington had to tell somebody from Massachusetts, somebody from Big Bad Virginia, back in the 1770s, we're going to have, 1789, we're going to have a democracy. This is the government we put together. Now, guess what? We have one person, one vote, that's the House. But we're going to have a bicameral body, which is going to be the Senate. And the Senate is going to have equal representation. Someone's going to say, wait a minute, you're going to give Rhode Island and Delaware the same representation I've got? That don't make any sense. What was their thought process? They didn't want the big guys beating up on little guys. And you had to build a consensus. So it might never have been written down in law. That was the premise of what we've got. And a senator, senator can talk all they want to. They can stop things. They can wear the clock out to where you move on to something else because until you can get them to agree. That's the way. Now, that's been abused. I'll be the first one to tell you that. That can be changed, but the bottom line is you get rid of the filibuster, and my Democrat friends, when Donald Trump was president, he beat up on Mitch McConnell and Republicans every day. They had 56 Republicans. He says, what the heck's wrong with you people? Can't you pass what I'm saying? Can't you pass it? They said, listen, you understand? We have to have 60. Well, get rid of that. Get rid of that. That's crazy. That's all he said. They held the line. And 33 Democrats signed a letter. Please don't get rid of the filibuster because it'll ruin democracy as we know it. As soon as they got in power, get rid of the filibuster because it didn't do what they wanted.
Right.
Rather than working together and trying to find a consensus.
And if they get rid of it and they elect a Republican president next time, they'll regret, you think, having made that decision.
I'm just saying one thing. We got rid of it for judges. You see what happened. We got rid of it for judges, and I begged Harry Reid not to do it. And I voted against it and lobbied everything I could. We couldn't stop him. Well, okay, we stopped him from doing the Supreme Court. But as soon as Mitch McConnell says, well, you did it for the district and circuit, so I'm going to do it for the Supreme. Well, I guarantee you one thing. They start doing it for legislation, and everything goes to the 51 vote threshold.
Okay.
I'm definitely not going back.
Let's take one quick last one, okay, please.
You said that voters deserve more options. Do you think that ranked choice voting in federal elections would help on that front?
I like it. I'm learning more about it.
Ranked choice.
And let me tell you one thing. I saw my dear, dear friend Lisa Murkowski would not be in the Senate if it wasn't for ranked choice.
Was not
voting.
for ranked choice, right?
So that might be an equalizer. I'm looking at it.
And again, the reason is that it prioritizes moving to a place where you get people from both sides.
That's exactly right.
In order to get
more people that you can move over and make your vote count. For that, it worked. And Lisa, if you ever have her here, she'll tell you exactly that was why she won.
Okay, Senator, it's been fun to talk to you. I appreciate
your
good spirit. Senator Joe Manchin, you all, thank you so much. We'll see you next year.